Professor Tijjani Muhammad-Bande is president of the 74th session of the UN General Assembly, a rotational position among member states of the United Nations. He is the second Nigerian to preside over the General Assembly, with the first in 1989. As his tenure comes to an end, Professor Muhammad-Bande speaks on his presidency, the role of the General Assembly, and more.
The United Nations General Assembly are the six principal organs of the United Nations. It is also the most important in that it is the forum or assembly where all member states or organizations send their representatives to. And it is the most universal in that everyone in the assembly has equal voice, equal rights, and its importance lies fundamentally in that it is really the norm-setting unit of the system. And almost every unit in some way must report to it, because it is where everybody is located. It is also the forum where heads of state and government of member states come to address their view of the world and the way they see the system going and what they think needs to be done. Other bodies are important, but they are different in terms of memberships. The only body or mandated organ, principal organ of the system that is universal is the General Assembly. And it makes resolutions, makes decisions, it sets the tone, it deals with any matter of importance to the membership. Well, the most challenging is that the United Nations is an organization of 193 member states with different histories, different political systems, different capacities, and because there are different sovereign states, it's not uncommon or unusual that they can see even important things in diametrically opposed ways. Nonetheless, it's still an assembly, and its entire focus is to see whether we can find common cause in solving global problems, because the United Nations is a forum where, regardless of circumstance, countries work with others to solve global problems, the kind that no country or region by itself alone can solve. By and large, there is still camaraderie to allow for conversation to take place, and it can be and has been difficult on occasion, but it's not a permanently divided house. We do try to reach consensus. At times we have not succeeded, but we have by far more consensus than we have disagreements.
Now, looking back the last 12 months, what would you say were your major achievements in office?
It's difficult for me to talk about my major achievement, but I can say that we crafted the vision of the 74th session of the Assembly around, in our view, one of the most important achievements of the United Nations system, which is agreeing to the 2030 agenda. And alongside the 2015 agreement or resolution around the Sustainable Development Goals 17 in all, climate action, the Paris Accord, which is not the UN that created, but the UN was central to having the Paris Accord. I think this is extremely important. And so we used what was already agreed to come up with those we consider urgent. And so the most important achievement for us is to work with what is already there as important and to highlight the importance of this and to use the platform of the assembly to push these things forward. And given the way in which the year came to be, one half of the time was normal, the remaining half was completely unprecedented. What was important was that we have been able to get all members to a common position that we continue to work. We take a look at our rules a bit more and still try, even under the pandemic, and especially because of the pandemic, to continue to work together in cooperation. It is absolutely important that the United Nations show example.
When the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus outbreak a pandemic, many had questioned how the United Nations will function.
I think the first principle was that because the United Nations exists to solve global problems, and the pandemic is a global problem, we resolved early on to continue to work. Obviously, the method of work had to change, but we did this in collaboration with all member states. We want to agree under a particular set of protocols to take decisions that we consider as valid, and we have taken decisions on resolutions up to around 70 under this kind of situation. We have also used the period to obviously think through how to confront, to create and grow a post-COVID world in which the fallout, whether transportation, whether health, whether education that we have seen, I think can be better addressed by the way in which we rebuild.
The ongoing U.S.-brokered emergent peace move in the Middle East has dominated global news headlines, especially between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. It is hoped that other Arab countries will join. Ambassador Muhammad-Bande shares his thoughts.
Well, I think for the General Assembly and of course particularly for the Security Council, which has the mandate by the Charter to take lead on matters to do with peace and security. Obviously, any movement that will de-escalate any conflict is important. We do hope that this particular approach has results. There are people who think a more comprehensive approach would have worked better, but the Assembly have no position on this. All I'm saying is that for the United Nations, anything that is any movement toward peace and away from conflict is important. We hope this adds to the movement toward peace.
Futuristically, how relevant do you think the UN will be in the area of global peace by 2030?
The United Nations has shown staying power. Regardless of what we hear, 75 years after the Second World War, we didn't have a global war. We have had regional conflicts. They are bad. Any conflict that brings loss of human life is a serious one. But with all the new technologies that can create all kinds of difficulties for peace and security, the norm of non-use of nuclear weapons in executing wars, I think, has remained, even if we must admit in the last few years there have been worries over whether there is already a new arms race. This is not exactly the case, but there are valid worries over sharpening of weapons. It is a serious matter, and the General Assembly has very clear resolutions concerning this, and the first committee of the United Nations of the Assembly deals with this matter. I think we must worry over nuclear weapons or any weapons of mass destruction. But that said, what I say is that just imagine a world in which there is no norm setting concerning human rights, concerning development, concerning peace and security, and you will have a very different understanding of or appreciation of the value of the United Nations and the General Assembly in particular, because this is where equality of states is very strictly enforced.
Over the years, there has been this perception that the federal government's foreign policy trust is neither here nor there. What is your opinion as the #1 diplomat here at the United Nations?
Well, I will not, for this week and for the next week, talk as PG about Nigeria's foreign policy, but in my role as a student of politics, but maybe further down the line we can discuss Nigeria's foreign policy. But I can simply say that Nigeria, like any other country, will tailor its foreign policy approaches to the changing nature of the world. The principles will appear to remain the same. Peace in the region, peace around the world, and solidarity is key. Each country will continue to shape its tools.
What is your hopeful projection for the African continent?
For Africa, obviously it is peace, security, rights, and development. The African Union is very clear, and the articles that created the Union are very well thought out in terms of the priority for democracy, a peaceful continent, prosperous, and which is equal to any in the world. And the youth should continue to privilege, give priority to knowledge, empathy, and respect for others, and a commitment to help the world, and a commitment that they have the future to not only to take from the current generation, but to improve. I think there is a lot of knowledge and vibrancy. You have seen leadership of the youth relating to very important questions. We talk about movements for social justice. The youth are as active, more active than any group. You talk about climate. So the major issues confronting the world, you just take a look. Leadership is from the youth because they appreciate it is their turn to get these things done.